Well, the topic is the urgency of prioritizing sustainability education, and people might wonder why all this when we are talking about bushfires in Australia. Well, we'll start with Australia so that we will be at peace with the topic. Australia, here in this large design of things, in the large spread of continents and Earth on the surface of the planet, is at the corner here down. Well, and Australia is a very interesting place. In fact, every bit of land on the surface of the Earth and every bit of ocean is interesting. But Australia is particularly so because of the strange diversity of flora and fauna there. Particularly, it perpetually keeps our interest just simply for that matter alone. And it becomes our concern when we repeatedly hear about problems in that continent related to bushfire or whatever adverse things happening, particularly related to global climate change and warming, etc. Well, and Australia is a place where we have most of the marsupials in the world, and we can see that Australia is so far away from South America, but South America and Australia divide between them I think almost all the marsupial mammals in the world, and Australia has not only kangaroos and wallabies as we most of us think. In fact, I had the feeling that kangaroos and wallabies were the only marsupial creatures in the whole world. But over time, I came to know that there are so many others, at least 100 in Australian continent, including the wombat, the koala, and the kangaroo bandicoot, kangaroo bandicoot with a pouch, and also strange monotremes like echidna and platypuses, etc. A very interesting continent. So whatever happens to Australia, whatever happens to any other part of the globe is of concern to us. And so, in my present talk, I am not talking specifically about Australia, but I'd like to move away, away from the planet a bit and look at it from a distance and talk about the planet as a single living unit. As a global background to all the fiery issues. So I have a few things to say as by way of introduction to sustainable education. One thing is we often feel that we are living on this planet, and a human being would tend to think of the planet as being as old as he or she is, and the rest being history. Well, in fact, the planet is unbelievably old. Earth is much, much old. And we go on saying probably this is the hottest period in the whole history of the Earth, but that is not so. In the history of the Earth, there has been much more periods when the temperature was immensely more than the present one. This is after the evolution of life on the planet. Before that, we know it was almost as hot as the sun. But after life evolved also, we had periods of much greater temperature. I think the Carboniferous period, for example, must have had much more, maybe several 10 degrees more, maybe 50 or 60 degrees temperature, and high humidity, in which all the huge trees that later turned into coal and we are tapping now were formed. So those periods of great temperature were there, and there were times when the Earth was covered in ice blankets, literally all creatures going extinct several times in the history of the planet. So global extinction events is not one. It is not it's not something that's going to happen. It has happened many times, but don't think that with every extinction, every single organism die out. There will be a few that would survive. So we know after the Jurassic period, after the huge the comet hit that killed all the dinosaurs, life came back, life in other forms. So life will always be there. Life has always been there. Well, even life will end, because as time passes, Earth will become warmer, because ultimately in a few billion years, not very long, the sun will exhaust the fuel that keeps it going, that sustains it will be extinguished, and the sun will kind of enlarge, and in the process of blowing up or enlarging, it will swallow the planets nearby, including the Earth. That will be the end of the Earth, but that will be a long, long time from now. We are concerned about this point of time, which is maybe less than a second in the big global, big cosmic design of things. But strange creatures that we live for about 70, 80 years. And we are very much concerned about the comforts that would sustain our lives on Earth. And interestingly, there has also been a lot of continental reorganizing. The continents, as we see presently, well, I don't know, this may be redundant information, everybody would know it. The distribution that we see now is also a temporary thing. There were times, there will eventually all these continents will again come together and form a single landmass, and it'll again split again. That has happened several times in history, in the history of the planet. And that is why you have Australia here having very similar organisms to those in South America. So because they were land masses that were close by once upon a time, maybe millions and millions of years back. That is how the destiny of the planet goes. It is not stable all the time. It keeps changing. And the Gaia, as we would call Earth, there's so many ways in which you can call the Earth. Bhumi Devi is another word that we can use. But Bhumi Devi will go on. And it is very foolish of us to think that we can save her. And we go about having placards saying, save nature, save the Earth. The Earth doesn't need our advocacy, in fact, because it's the continuance of our species. It's our existence that we, being selfish individuals, certainly for our survival, are worried about. So whenever we talk about nature, whenever we talk about conservation, whenever we talk about environment, we are actually talking about our survival and our continuance on the planet. That certainly is in jeopardy, which is, as I was trying to say, is not something new in the history of the planet. Every species will eventually cease to be. But here, why we are spending so much time on bushfire-related or global climate change-related deliberations is that in the last maybe 100 years or maybe 200 years, we have been hastening this process of the movement towards demise, movement towards a very unfavorable movement towards a circumstance on the planet Earth which is very unfavorable to human existence. And that's why we are very much worried about. And if you're not worried about it, it's good. It's a good thing, because worrying won't take us anywhere. But we need to be aware that we are in serious problem, or maybe our species is in serious problem. And that is why we are talking a lot about all these things. It's very often we confuse the love of love of our own survival with the love of the natural objects around us. Well, the present talk is meant to what shall we say? Will be on environmental education for the non-specialist. So that is, life science people have their deep knowledge of environment, whether it's of practical use to them or the society is a different matter. I'm not being cynical, but there's a point to it. Even the non-specialist, maybe literature or history or archaeology or psychology, whatever domain we are in, we too have a reasonable knowledge of all these matters for all practical purposes. But still our knowledge doesn't seem to help the planet much, or help our sustenance much. Well, not this idea of environmental education, of conservation, etc., have been part of academic rhetoric for decades now. This goes without saying. I remember as early as 80s. Now, I can't remember a lot before that, because I was born only about 12, 15 years before that. So as early as 80s, we have been talking about things that could happen in the coming decades. And though the science of environmental education had not developed so much, there has been a lot of discussions on that. I remember as a degree student going to meet Sugata Kumari teacher because I was a little bit worried about how things were going on in terms of deforestation and a lot of those concerns that troubled us in the 80s. Yeah, that was one of my earlier, what shall we say, a kind of angst kind of situation, which drove me to her. And she very kindly talked to me for quite some time. And she, even as early as early 80s, she was not very sure that all the things that we are doing would eventually kind of end up in a very positive thing. But all those things we have been doing for the last several decades, maybe from 60s or 70s, have done a lot of good. Certainly, they have done a lot of good because, but for those awareness, but for the steps we had taken those decades back, maybe things would have been much worse than it is today. All right. So I'll be looking at the impacts which are not sufficient to match needs, I'm saying, but it would be a very judgmental thing to say, because all the environmentally conscious people, all the academics, all the people who had the understanding of things, and all the a whole lot of people with intuitive knowledge of leading a sustainable life have contributed a lot, as I said. So there is no point in being depressed over it. But still, as we see things going on now, we know that the efforts have not been totally effective. A lot more needs to be done, and and we need to go on discussing this. And the whole thing, the governments are there, the industries are there, the corporates are there, all those people are out there. But the most important step that we can take towards ensuring a more sustainable survival of the human race would be through the way in which we prioritize education, sustainability education. That is why I thought I'll talk a bit about that today. And I'll be attempting to define sustainability education, and I'll also be talking about revising our environmental education. Forgive me, there are a couple of spelling errors. These are 4 books which I would say adumbrated or rather highlighted the things to come. So in the 60s and 70s, Silent Spring, The Limits of Growth, Population Bomb, Future Shock, Alvin Toffler. These 4 books in the 60s and 70s kind of were the first voices, serious voices, in the form of published works which had wide circulation, which made people think of the need for developing a more a different approach to the concept of development and life in general. The word sustainability emerged in the 70s because the word is a very familiar word. Sustain has always been there, but sustainability in the sense we use it emerged only in the 70s in terms of the earth and its ability to sustain life on it. And sustainability, the concept of sustainability is oriented towards human welfare and survival. It's a very, very selfish thing. It's entirely human. We are very worried only about human welfare and survival. There is nothing wrong in that, because as a species, it is our business to see that we survive. But because our survival cannot happen on its own, because we are intricately, our existence is so intricately interwoven with the existence of so many other million organisms on the earth, it's very important to be a little more unselfish in our approach so that our selfish interests are met. Forgive me for sounding so Machiavellian, but I think this is generally the way the world looks at itself. Well, sustainability, in fact, defines the human space. It defines the role and responsibilities of human beings in the biosphere. We thought in after the post-war in the post-war years, in the 50s, people thought of infinite possibilities. There were a lot of tensions, a lot of political issues, things happening across the globe, but there was also in the mind of the average affluent individual, the optimism that a lot of comforts are in store, and that was true. You know, 20 less than 30 years back, even a telephone was a rare thing. Even in the cities, there weren't many houses with a landline. And today we are at, I don't have to say about it, just 30 decades after that. And going back, we see that technology took such long times to grow from one thing to the other. Now we see how it is happening. Well, all those dreams have come true. But at that point, when people dreamt of infinite luxury and infinite comforts in life, they did not think much about the responsibilities that we would have in this biosphere, or the surface of the earth where life exists, so that life will continue in the manner that we would find it comfortable to exist. Another important thing that happened in around those times were the photographs sent back from NASA. NASA was doing a lot of research at that time. Russia was there too, but the kind of research that NASA did more of a wider nature, taking maybe millions of photographs of Earth and sending them back. And the photographs of the Earth from the what do you call it, space, the space, gave us a totally new perspective of the planet on which we live. It looks very different from all other objects in the space. It has a slightly blue color. It looks comfortable. It looks cooling to the eye, unlike the Jupiter or Mars or any other planet, which is it's a pain on the eye to watch. Earth has a cooling impact. That's because we have that kind of an atmosphere, which fortuitously developed over billions of years of strange coincidences. Based on these photographs, this gentleman, James Lovelock, who was a scientist who was working with NASA, he came up with this Gaia theory, saying that Earth should be treated as a single living organism. Just like we would say that the largest living organism is the coral, the Great Barrier Reef near Australia, or just part of Australia. It's actually millions and millions of organisms living together, but we look at it as one biome or one living unit. The Earth can be seen as one living unit, with you and I being some tissues and cells in the body. It is metaphorically very convenient, though scientifically not very precise. But for all our practical purposes, looking at the Earth as Gaia, as a single living organism, is very, very convenient in our discourses on sustainability, conservation, etc. And it was around those times when people were talking about the planet's carrying capacity. The planet, there is a limit to which you can push the Earth. It has a ability, it has infinite ability, but there is a limit to beyond which it's dangerous to push the Earth. But since the 50s, the huge development machine across the world has been trundling on, and those countries which were not that much into development, that much into industries, were looking at the developed countries with envy in their eyes, and they all aspire to be as developed, as contaminated, as polluted as the developed nations were. But I have no business to say all these things, because I also use the products of all this contamination, all this pollution, all this overproduction and overconsumerism. All the gadgets I have in front of me, this laptop, these connection things, this lamp here, and this microphone here, my mobile phone, which I have switched off and kept away, and all these gadgets on my table are produced at the risk of our continued existence on this earth. So I am as complicit in it as anybody else is. Well, the mid 20th century dream of more comforts from miraculous science and the unprecedented acceleration of growth, as we call it. So the growth, the growth, development, etc., became very problematic terms. They are very problematic terms because they have inherently in them this conflict. We cannot do without growth. We cannot do without development. But this very development is causing discomfort for us, and this very development is leading to problems that would undermine the very continuance of the development. And we have come to such a stage that we need to think seriously about the dichotomy between Earth systems and human systems. Earth has its own way of doing things. Earth has infinite healing capacity. As Lovelock talked about Gaia, as the Earth as a body, as a living thing, including the atmosphere, a bit of atmosphere which sustains Earth, which sustains life on it, as a living body has great ability to heal itself. The human body has great ability to heal itself. If you have a wound on your body, with or without the help of medical science, it will eventually heal. In most cases, there could be cases when it doesn't, when you get septicemia and you die. But mostly, human body has the infinite capacity to repair damages that happen to it. It constantly happens to the body. In the same way, Earth also, as a large single organism, has this way of springing back into its formal shape, whatever damage we do to it. But still, there is a limit to that. But I remember long back, this was 2006, if I remember. I was talking in a conference on this topic, on Gaia hypothesis. It was around that time that I discovered it, and I was very excited about it. So I went on talking a lot about Gaia hypothesis. And I remember a very senior person, I don't know what specialized area he was from, asked me, Mr. Lal, don't you think Earth has infinite capacity to heal itself? And the things we do to it cannot really affect it. It can swing back to another steady state. Don't you agree with that? But luckily, I wouldn't have had an answer for that at that time. But luckily, because of readings of James Lovelock and plain common sense, I came up with this response, which was also a way in which I got articulated. I got that idea articulated to myself that Earth will heal itself, Earth will bounce back, but it will be in a kind of state that may not be very friendly to human beings. So we need to worry a lot about human systems being kind of working in sync, syncing with, use the word sync, or to work along with, work in a way that is very friendly with the Earth systems. Earth's way of healing, Earth's way of producing has a pace. It's all rather evolutionary, rather slowly. But human systems today, with highly sophisticated machines, we move at a much more tremendous pace than the Earth systems can even put up with. And when I was preparing this, I was struck by this story of Sinbad the sailor, where Sinbad and his people travel and they reach an island. And we can see the whole picture, but Sinbad, unfortunately, being very close, did not see the whale. And he and the sailors anchored near the shore, and the whale has high vegetation on it. Imaginary, certainly, this Leviathan, which is floating like that maybe for months and years, and that doesn't really happen in real life. The maximum life that can have on a whale would be many kinds of algae and many kinds of shell organisms that attach themselves to it. But well, Arabian Nights is the limit of fancy, and you have a whole collection of trees and animals there. And Sinbad comfortably spends time there. His people find time there. They enjoy the island. But a time comes when they push the limit. They start creating a fire on it. And what happens is the animal, the Leviathan, realigns itself. It just rolls over, takes a dive, and comes back. And we know the story. So this is somewhat what is meant by the Gaia hypothesis, where it is said that we have everything we can have, but if we push beyond a limit, there will be a realignment which may not be very favorable to us. Well, that's known facts. Well, these are by way of introduction. And coming to sustainability education, I was talking about 60s and 70s, when this global consciousness, the awareness of the carrying capacity of the earth and need for a sustainability consciousness, all those things were slowly coming up in a very diffused manner in some quarters of the world. And well, we might, many would be thinking that hasn't these thoughts been there in philosophies? Haven't our masters, India or elsewhere, have talked about this long back? They have. This has always been there in all kinds of ancient literature. But unfortunately, we don't seem to do much, benefit much from that. So that is why we need a restatement of all these facts in the modern 21st century scenario. So from the kind of global, in the sense, vision of seeing the earth as a global entity began. And then soon in universities, environmental studies was becoming part of the curriculum, though in our part of the world it took more time because we did not face that kind of issues at that time, perhaps. Well, initially this environment science was totally about ecology and environment, facts about life and how life exists and the interconnections and all that. But today, at this point of history, environmental science, the word environmental science is not enough. And another thing about environment science is that we have introduced that all over the world. In India, in Kerala too, we have environment science from school level. And very often, a problem is it is taught as a compulsory thing. Nobody's interested in it. In university level, English teachers have a paper, environmental science. I think we are the most qualified people to teach environmental science. But still, the way because we don't have time, we perhaps rush through it, etc. And also the matter we have in all the syllabi, not only the syllabus that we teach in the colleges, all over India, the EVS syllabus is a very unappealing thing. There may be differences, forgive me if I am generalizing too much. A lot of information about environmental rules, environmental laws, environmental agencies, acronyms to be learned by heart, stuff like that. Those are solid facts. And particularly in the way we teach, our education system just gives a lot of information to students. And EVS become another chunk of information they just store away somewhere, reproduce in the exam, and forget about it. I remember some 5-6 years back, I was doing this whole Earth exhibition in Christ College, Christ University in Bangalore. And after meeting a bunch of undergraduates in the commerce sector, they were saying, see, whenever we hear about environment, EVS, we tend to shut down. We don't listen anymore. So whenever environment-related issues are discussed, we tend to shut down. I think that has become a universal thing because we talked about it so much that we got fed up. We know that we know it, and we don't want to hear anymore about it. Okay, that is the state of things now. That is why I'm saying that we should shift to sustainability education. It's not replacing one with the other. That's why I want to talk about it. Today, environmental issues, again, is not environment. It's not just a few pollution related things or deforestation related things. In the every act that we are involved in, every moment of our life, we are doing things which are having an impact on the delicate ecosystem. No aspect of life is today free of environmental repercussions. And again, we have much larger issues that need to be discussed at a much higher level, like global inequalities, population explosion, and the impact of industry and technology. But I am focusing more on those things that we can do on individual level, because I am a person who believes that we need to have a lot of micro level action. But even in terms of technology, I wouldn't. I'm not for smart classrooms. I would rather say that you have your phone. You make your phone your little smart classroom. Hmm. Well, that's a different topic. So this micro level management, micro level management of global issues is something that is important, because the action of individuals, actions that we take, decisions we take on an individual level, become collectively the have the collective impact. And coming to sustain, and so what we need is a kind of sustainability literacy. It has nothing to do with love of nature, as we would tend to say. It has nothing to do with love of trees or plants. It's not even love. The word is very wrong. It is why we are worried about trees. It's simply because trees are so vital to our existence. We haven't yet understood the seriousness of the matter. And it's very very disappointing to see the way in which individuals manage their yards and the tree under their countries, under their control. It's very very dangerous that they handle it so casually. In institutions, we handle the flora so casually because we are not our literacy in sustainability is virtually zero. So sustainability literacy is about having sufficient knowledge and understanding to make a good enough choice or decision, not about buying the right car, but not only about that. It affects that, but also all the little choices we make, mostly unconscious choices, unconscious decisions we take in everyday life, have to be driven by a kind of invisible sustainability literacy. What matters most is not how much we know. That's one danger we have. Now we know everything. We know all about conservation. We know all about global warming. We know everything, but it depends on sustainability literacy. Is all about how we use that knowledge, whether we do it at all, and is it our fault if we don't. Well, it's about developing a mindset. It's very difficult to develop a mindset or shape a mind after we are 20 or 30 or beyond that. This is something that has to begin at a very younger age. And to do that, we need to be properly aware. And it is that awareness I am pointing to. So the knowing which goose to cook is the word I've said. So if you don't cook the right goose, you will have your goose cooked. To use the story of the goose that lays golden egg, I have always found this a very convenient example. What shall we say? Not example, a convenient parable or convenient image. Image to talk about sustainable development. See, this hen can lay only one golden egg a day. Whatever you do, you cannot make it lay 2 eggs per day. You have to wait. And you know the story. So this is in the simplest term. Perhaps that's why I said our traditional knowledge has a lot of sustainable knowledge. We somehow have discredited all the traditional knowledge, and it's not our fault because the way in which we lived has changed. Well, anyway, the decisions that we take. Sustainable literacy is not easy to attain. I am not fully sustainable literate. I take many wrong decisions. But then why I'm talking about it? Because it's so vital, because it's so important, because our lives, the continuance of our comfortable existence on this earth, the continuance of the existence of the students we teach, the continuance of the existence of our children and the children to come, all though all that depends on the decisions we take in this moment of history. So understanding sustainability involves emotional as well as cognitive processes. We generally thought that it was a rational decision. Environment-related, conservation-related matters are all rational things governed by cognitive processes. That is not so. A lot of our emotional life, a lot of emotive factors are involved. So it's a very complex thing. Human being is a very complex entity with multiple aspects to him or her, and all these things, all these levels, also we need to address, or we need to appeal if sustainability literacy need to be brought in the past. Here, even now, that this is what we do uh, across the world. This is what people do. Environmental campaigners rather naively assume that if people only knew the facts, you give them the facts, alarm them with the facts, and people would respond and enjoy and engage appropriately. That doesn't happen. That simply doesn't happen. At least it hasn't happened to a substantial level. It's not enough that we have information. It is important that we develop a mindset which is more, to use the very simplest word, environment friendly, but that is not the right word. I have always felt that Homo sapiens, we human beings, are incurably romantic. To use Bluntschli's word, a man of incurable romantic disposition. We are. See, we have such a lot of water on Earth, and we do a lot of research. We are excited when somebody says there may be water on the moon, there may be water on the Mars, so there may be water in another planet, in another galaxy. We are so excited, and we are not at all worried about. This is a little brook called Ameyanjan, which is not very far from the Trivandrum city. This is the way we keep our water bodies on Earth, and we spend millions and millions of rupees or dollars or whatever, on research to find if there is water on the moon. I think it's high time we prioritized. I'm not against space exploration. I mean, particularly, I am an individual who has always been looking at space research and space exploration with great excitement, with a child's excitement. But at this point of history, we need to prioritize about on what we invest our research, on what we invest our resources. We have urgent need on Earth to preserve our water bodies, preserve so many other natural resources, which is an imperative which we cannot shut our eyes to. But instead of that, we are often carried away by very fanciful ideas about so many ideas. But because this is, what shall we say, like the snake, the frog in the mouth of the snake, crying out it's hungry. Some kind of situation we are in. Well, yeah, we are a very romantically inclined race, and we see what humanity has been doing over time. We have today, big tourist attractions like the Inca civilization ruins, or the splendors in Egypt, or the Great Wall of China, the Taj Mahal in India, all those wonders, and the 21st century wonders like the buildings in Dubai and all kinds of strange constructions that we are creating. We have always been creating wonders at the cost of the base of subsistence, I would say. One very good example is Easter Islands, a Polynesian island, where we have those huge statues. I have a picture coming up in a slide in a while. A whole island with huge statues. And it is believed that there is one strong theory saying that that island was covered by huge trees and rich vegetation and rich life-giving flora. And the people cut all those trees in their attempt to build these huge statues. And finally, that landscape became so barren that people couldn't live on it. So I just do not understand why we do that, but we do that. That is perhaps because we are very romantic in our temperament. And that is perhaps what makes life so good. That's why we study literature and poem, etc. But still, that's another aspect to it. We have this feeling that technology can save the planet. Certainly, technology can save the planet. But are we a bit too romantic? That is the question I am asking. Instead of, wondering at how we can, revive our rivers, whether it is a Kuam River in in Chennai, or any river for that matter in the world, particularly in the third world, which is so polluted, do we have the will to do that? Or do we want to have wonders like the Machu Picchu or the Great Wall of China? And there is also this problem with development challenge, which I would call development challenge. The picture below is a slum, Tharavi, and the this is it, the back part. You see the water, and we generally, the world development agenda, at least in the spoken form, is that our idea is to develop everybody to a high standard, a benchmark. So that's where what we feel, and everybody has a right to all kinds of luxuries, and we need to upgrade. But the question is, can we do that? Can we do that? The answer is, it's very difficult to do that. And here is I don't know if this is clear enough, but this axis, the ecological footprints, is the level to which we can develop, see, upwards, and without harming environment. So, and this is the point. Around 2 is the point to which we can develop without harming the environment seriously. Every millimeter, every inch we go beyond that, we are seriously harming the base on which the whole infrastructure is built. And the other axis, the axis here is called Human Development Index, is very measurable comforts in life. So, and that 8 would be considered a good point where you live a comfortable life. Beyond that would be immense luxury. And here, this little place would be the human, the sustainable development quadrant. But look at this picture here. We have a picture of world nations here. This is a sustainable development quadrant. Ideally, all countries should be in this level. So there is equality there. All countries are optimally developed so that everybody have what they need, but not more than that. But you see that no countries are actually in that quadrant. Several are lagging much behind. India would be somewhere not very far, but still far. And you would also see many countries which are much high in the Human Development Index. Meaning that the environmental cost at which they attain this is very, very high. So as I am very sure in the course of the previous many talks, is this topic of the cost, who would pay the price of environmental, what shall we say, degradation, or the problems of the problems created by development. Who is responsible is a constant issue. Well, I just wanted to say that development poses a serious problem like this. We have our ideals of equality. We want to bring everybody up, but then you either have to push all these people down, which we cannot do. And if we push all these people up, then there will not be the base on which to do that. So that's a big predicament we are facing. And it's time to talk about 2 books that. So I think these 2 are very excellent resources. Those who want to study, do further studies on environment education, sustainability education, I mean, these books would be very useful. Leadership for Sustainability Development in Higher Education, which is a Bloomsbury publication, and Prioritizing Sustainability Education, a Comprehensive Approach, which is Routledge. Both these are extremely practical books written by teachers across the world. You'll study, you'll find several case studies about how they have been addressing this issue of sustainability literacy. And I owe part of the information that I'm using for this talk to these books. And I would like to quote a line from the second book, which is Prioritizing Sustainability Education, this book, where Jeanette Armstrong, she's a New World writer, being in place means knowing intimately that the human responsibility is to the living system. So that is what we a while ago called Gaia, the living system, the intricate system. And being out of place means having little or no knowledge of it. It is the knowledge of the living system that we need to have. a knowledge that we feel in our blood, a knowledge that is instinctive to us, knowledge which is unconscious, and knowledge which is so strongly ingrained, the knowledge of the living system, which is science. And no knowledge of it. So being out of place, you are not in the right position if you have if you do not have sufficient knowledge of it as a living system, because it's a living system that requires reciprocal relationship and care. You need to, you can't just keep on taking. You need to give as well. Well, so a couple more points. Rethinking environmental education, because this is what ultimately I want to discuss. I mean, I have been discussing this in our context. How do we revision environmental education based on sustainability literacy? They need to find. One thing is, scientific books on environment alone will not do, because people have different sensibilities. Some people can be appealed through knowledge, some people can be appealed through art. There are different narratives that appeal different people. And what I feel also is that we need to diffuse, we need to intersperse environmental literacy or sustainability literacy through our disciplines, through all our actions in the school and college, university level. In all our actions need to be, all our study programs need to have this kind of an ecological base to it. My talk is done for all its practical purpose, but there are a couple of things I'd like to leave with you, things that we can do from today onwards. One is, let the flora be, let the fauna be, or don't take that crock home and snip, but leave that little bit of plastic. Well, I'll explain this one by one and quickly leave. Let the flora mean is, it's very important not to remove the cover of plants on the surface of the earth. They are not there as a weed. Unless you have a very important need, it's good to have a green cover. We have a feeling that the land that we have, the college campus or the office campus, needs to be constantly weeded. That's the word we use. That is not so. That green cover is essential. I'm leaving it there. And this is a picture of Madras Christian College campus, which a college campus which I liked a lot. They just allow it to be wild. It is not because we love wilderness. It is because wildness is the natural order. And it is very important to allow it to be like that. Wherever wildness is possible, let it be. And second thing is, let the fauna be, don't take that crock home. Is pets. This is a time, particularly since this lockdown, people have gone crazy about pets. They are bringing in all kinds of bizarre pets into their homes. See, I'll give you two examples of what happened, what is seen today, but happened maybe 10 or 15 years ago. This fish net is a haul of armored catfish called suckerfish. They were brought into homes as this is an exotic fish. It is not a native of our water bodies. It was brought into our homes as very small, very cute suckerfish, which would attach itself to the wall of our fish tanks at home. But these little fish have the habit of growing up. And when they grow up, they become very ugly and very rough skinned. And people throw it into the water body because they don't want to keep it anymore. And they proliferate. They proliferate and they virtually replace all the native stuff in our waters. It's a very, very dangerous kind of thing. And you can see people trying to catch them and remove them. And it's very hard to kill them also. And this is this nice looking turtle. This is a turtle which would be just, it will fit in your palm when it is very small, a cute fellow. But once you keep it in aquarium, he'll start growing. In 4 years, 5 years, he'll grow up to about this size. And he is a class 1 predator. And you get fed up and you throw it into our environment. And today, red-necked turtle is a big problem all over our land as well, because it tends to replace other native tortoises. And again, these kind of intrusions happen simply because of our carelessness. So don't bring in, if you want to choose a pet, take a pet from your surrounding, not something like iguanas are coming in. All kinds of bizarre things are being imported into our country, into our state, into our city. Be very careful before choosing a pet. That is again part of our literacy. Finally, a precise thing you can do: use plastic as less as possible. But whenever you use a plastic packet or a sachet, don't snip away the wedge shaped thing. Millions and millions of bits of snipped edges of plastic covers are filling the ocean. Even it is slowly moving and falling into the Marina Trench, which is the deepest part of the ocean. So, big environmental threat. Your contribution is just cut it enough to pour out whatever is inside. Don't remove. Even a chips thing, make a long cut and empty whatever you have in it. Don't cut that little edge and throw it, because a cover can be recycled. That little edge, in millions and millions, weighing tons, become a big issue, which we can prevent by the simple act. Well, I have not resolved all the environmental issues, but three little takeaways that I'm giving. So thank you very much for listening to me. And so before you send to know to adapt John Donne's lines, who started the fires, bushfires or whatever fire it is, probably we are responsible for it. So whatever you do in your part of the world has an impact on other parts of the world, because we have a single destiny. Like children, we fight about nationalities, religion, etc. But ultimately, we have a shared kind of destiny as human beings, as multiple cells, tissues on the surface of Gaia. So thank you very much.